Yo patrons, this is Johannes from Noisebud, and today I'm releasing a new plugin that's pretty cool. That's called Foal, and it is a mastering plugin, but it's not a kind mastering plugin. It's not when you're after a clean sound. This is a very special kind of. It's a mashup of the Sonic's inflator and a maximizer, pretty much. But you use it in a very special way. You put it post your final limiter. So you do your normal mastering things, EQ, compression, maybe a little bit of stereo width and stuff like that. And you put your final limiter, then comes Foal. And Foal will take the little bit of headroom that's left and we'll see, can we utilize this little space that we have? Can we utilize that to gain both perceived loudness and RMS levels? So here we go. I'm gonna talk a bit more how it works later, but this is just to demo it. We start with an electronic track. Maybe 1.5 dB more. You can hear it's a little bit crunchy, but in this track, it's pretty cool. I like it crunchy, so it's okay. Alright, let's go and listen to some metal, and we're gonna do the same thing. We take everything back to the original, and in metal, especially in metal, because of the way you usually mix drums in metal, Foal will have a huge impact, way more impact than in electronic music. So let's see if you can hear that. Yes, when you drive it a bit hard like I did in this instance, it doesn't sound too good. You bring up a lot of things that's not beneficial for the mix, so you probably need to go back and EQ it a little bit again to use this. But could you hear the drums? That is my main question. If let's just use the clip function, and I'm gonna play that snippet again and listen to the drums when I bypass and activate this. And maybe we don't need, let's use 6 decibels here. Let's type in 6 decibels. Okay, here we go. You can hear that it's like the mid channel all of a sudden just hit the same level as the guitars in the side channel, which means that the stereo image kind of shrimps down a little bit. So you probably need to address that earlier in the chain. But it's really cool how you can just lift up the drums and place them more in the center of the sound image with this plugin. I think I have another metal track here. Let's do the same with this one. I don't know how this sounds. And of course, I'm overdoing it a little bit. So let's use the dry wet control and dial this back a little bit and see how that sounds. Actually, let's put it on 50% right away. Immediately it starts to sound a little bit better. So I usually end up on the left side of 50%. So from maybe 20% up to around 50% in the dry wet. And I also often start with 100% wet, dial it in until I start to hear the distortion, and then I back off to 50%. That way you won't be able to hear the distortion. But if we listen in the delta, yeah, you know, it's like chaos in the delta. All right, let's go back to the electronic music here and do some things. And let's use the whole screen here, because we gonna loudness match. I didn't put a loudness match button in Foal. Maybe I should do that. Maybe that will be in an upcoming version, because I realized that it's pretty cool to have that, to be able to listen if I can hear the differences when it's loudness matched. Then yeah, it's always good to do that. So maybe I will put just a button to do that. Yep, I think I will do that. But that's in an update. Right now it's not there. So we're gonna use per-loves to compensate for the gain change. And we're gonna start at, let's put this in soft clipping mode as well, and let's put it on -1.5 in warmth. And let's dial something in here.
I don't want you at anything less than your best. I don't want you at anything less than your best.
When I hit the pre button, so when this button is in pre mode, then we'll listen to the unprocessed signal. When this is in the up position, then we'll listen to the loudness compensated version of the signal that's processed with Foal. So that could be good to know. I'm gonna play the same section and I'm gonna keep the zoom so you can see the pre button here, and see if you perceive the Foal processed signal as louder than the dry signal. So we start with the unprocessed signal.
I don't want you at anything less than your best.
I hope you can hear that. I can clearly hear that the Foal process signal is perceived as a little bit louder. It's not by much, but it's a little bit louder. I feel that it's a little bit louder. It measures the same, though. That's why we're using parallels, because we know that if I render this, they will measure exactly the same, but the Foal processed version will be perceived as a little bit louder, and the peak levels will be lower on Foal. So that's what parallels does. It lets you listen to how the material actually will sound in the real world. The changes you make, will they gain loudness in the real world on Spotify and YouTube and stuff like that. And if we hit bypass up here and this little button, that means that we will be able to listen to the processed and unprocessed signal. We're going to use the pre button again. So the same pre button, it has the same function as earlier, but it won't loudness compensate the signal. So this is the difference without loudness compensation on. So this is more listen to the RMS level, how it goes up. So we start in bypass.
I don't want you at anything less than your best.
It's clearly louder, but you can't really tell that there's more distortion. If you listen very carefully, then you maybe be able to spot that, but most people won't be able to do that. So that's really cool. Of course, you can drive it really hard and then it's obvious. And things to know is that the more you compress the signal with this method, the less transients you will have. You will kill the transients with compression. So I usually don't use that too much. Usually maybe 1, max 2 decibels of compression. Depends on the original signal. But you will start to destroy the signal pretty easy with compression. The clipping, however, I can drive that pretty hard and add a lot of distortion, but it will still sound okay. It won't smear the transients really, since you will gain peak level. So drums will hit pretty hard anyway. So clipping is where the real loudness is with this plugin. And as with all clipping, it adds a lot of distortion. So just bear that in mind. All right, I'm gonna start to talk a little bit about how the different controls, in this plugin. I think I will take a little break and come back because I need a glass of water. I got it. I got some water. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the plugin, how you use it. So the detection section is really mostly about my dynamic bypass controls that I have in a lot of my plugins. So what you do is that you play a section of the song, the loudest part, and you click this little auto button down here. That will set the incoming signal so that you easily can dial in the threshold. So I'm gonna do that.
I don't want you at anything less than your best.
This means that as the signal goes below the threshold, the plugin will be bypassed. And we can hear that in the delta, but you will hear that it's not a fast, it won't go from fully active to bypassed like instantly. It will slowly do that. So we're going to demo that by playing a section, and I will raise the threshold so the signal is below the threshold, and we'll listen to the delta so you can hear how the processing start to disappear. As you can hear, it takes a while, so it slowly fades out, and that is since we add a lot of loudness. It sounds really weird if there's a break and the signal goes below the threshold and the level just jumps. That sounds really, weird. But the way in Foal, it will do that very naturally. It will lower the signal when it's not processing, but that will sound really musical and really cool. And it's really fast when it starts to the signal goes above the threshold again. So let's do that. So we're hitting play, and I'm gonna lower the threshold so the signal goes above.
I don't want you at anything less than your best.
It's really fast when it goes above. It's really slow when it goes below. So that's how the threshold control works. And below you have a sidechain filter for this function. So low will just take like 100 hertz and down in account when it comes to the signal that controls the threshold. Full will use the whole spectrum. And the idea with this is, in most situation and in most music, if there is some kind of break in the music, there's a pause in the music, but there's still some musical element still there, it's usually not the low end that's been playing. And if the low end is present, the effect that you want from Foal, the clipping and all that, maybe you want that for a pause or break with a lot of low end in it. So that's why you can choose the full or the low end. You choose what works for the music you work with best. It doesn't affect how things sound, it just affects when the plugin is active or not. And compression. The idea with compression and the clip control is that compression will do pretty much the same thing as the clipping, but it will do it way slower. And the way it works is that we measure the incoming peaks of the signal. That's why you should place this post your limiter. So the peaks should be about where it's supposed to be. And then we measure how much headroom do we have from where the signal is at currently up to 0 decibels full scale, or rather the max position that's set by the incoming signal. So how much headroom do we have? Can we raise the signal here? And it tries to do that without adding distortion when you use the compress. When you use clip, then it just fills that gap, whatever the signal may be, which adds a lot of distortion because you are forcing the signal to be at the sample point that it's not supposed to be. So it will be a really non-linear behavior, but it's still slowed down to the point where it doesn't sound bad. The distortion that's added is pretty much like any compressor or anything that moves the signal dynamically in level in some kind. You always have a little kind of distortion when you do that. The speed determines the amount of distortion. So you can say that these are pretty much the same. The clip and the compress control works similarly, but compress is slower, clip is way faster. So that's the way to view that. You can listen to the clip type. This is just like any clipper. Hard clip sounds like a hard clipper. Soft clipper sounds like a soft clipper. I often like soft clipping better. It sounds more musical. Hard clipping often sounds a bit too aggressive and digital in a way. But when it comes to loudness, hard clipping is, you can't beat hard clipping. Just if you don't count how good it sounds, you just after that loudness. But let's listen to the differences, and we're gonna listen in delta for that. So we play a section here.
I don't want want you at anything less than your best.
Hard clipping is more aggressive. Soft clipping starts to alter the sample point gradually before it hits the max position. So that's the difference between those. You just use what you need for your particular project. The warm control. This is actually has to do with the effect of audio when you clip, especially hard clipping. Soft clipping is not as, it affects soft clipping as well, but hard clipping especially will take away low end, because if you imagine that have a waveform that plays the low end and it goes like this, and all of a sudden it just goes droop and like this, it's the low end that will suffer from that, because all the other frequencies are really quick. They are way smaller, moves very fast. They rarely hit the max position. It's often the low end that will get hurt. So you lose low end, which means that if you drive this hard, you will end up with a much brighter signal, which will add loudness. And so that's the cool thing. But I decided to add an algorithm that will soften that effect, so that you can have the best of both worlds. So it will make the signal, or the distortion that's added will be warmer, if you like. So let's listen to how that sounds when we clip, and we're gonna use hard clipping, and I'm listening delta with this as well. And actually, let's use 100% wet as well.
I don't want you at anything less than your best.
That's the delta signal. Let's do the same thing, but this time we're listening to the full signal.
I don't want you at anything less than your best.
And I'm maxing it out right now so you can hear the difference. But can you hear that all the typical artifacts from hard clipping kind of disappears a little bit, and it way more warm and pleasant to listen to. And normally I'm usually at -1 or -1.5 dB of effect. This means that it will take away the added high end of the transients of the highest peaks were by the decibel amount that you decide of here, and you can go to 3 decibels, so that's quite a lot of attenuation of the high frequencies. So that's the warm control. The LUF difference is just to tell you that you have raised the measured LUFs by this amount. So that's what the LUFs difference is. I will probably put a loudness compensation button down here so you can listen to it loudness compensated, but not in this version. And the dry wet is the dry wet control. It will go from 0 to 100%, and that's for dialing it back a little bit in an easy way, so you don't overdrive it, and also so that you can automate the effect, the amount of the effect for different parts of a track. And you also have the result. That's a meter that will give you, let's go to this screen again, the incoming peaks, and it will show you the outgoing peaks, and it won't show you any numbers. It will just show you this is the height of the incoming, and then it will show you this is the height of the resulting peaks. And why I put that there is because it's pretty interesting. When you use Foal, the end result will often be that the processed signal has lower peaks than the dry signal. And the reason for that is because there's a slowness built into Foal that slows the effect down, because otherwise this would yield too much distortion. And by slowing it down, it will actually, it won't reach the top position, the highest peaks, as often as the dry signal does, because it doesn't have the time to reach that. The algorithm will slow it down, so it won't get to the same height. So let's have a look at that.
I don't want you at anything less than your best. Beautiful, perfect breath.
Alright, that is Foal version 1. Even if this version says version 0.02, your version would say version 1, because I will change that number before I upload this to Patreon. And this is a really cool plugin. I hope you like it and use it the way I use it. Just to bring stuff, you're gonna realize that, especially for the stereo image, this is really cool. It's so cool. It stabilizes the stereo image, even if it feels a little bit narrow when you start using it. When you use maybe some mid-side EQ or some other technique to just give it a little bit more width, you get a much more stable, pretty much like you are using a compressor in mastering. A bit of the same feeling you get with this plugin. And it's placed post your limiter. So I hope you like it, and I'll see you with the next plugin or thing that I come up with, and have a good evening. Bye bye.